Ladies and gentlemen, it is time again for the next instalment of the Quantum Leap Business Show, going around the world to all the small business owners, giving them ideas, insights, and inspiration from some of the world leaders in different fields, thought leaders, and people that have been there, done that, and hopefully giving you some background to run your businesses a little bit better in both uncertain times as well as some of the great times that I'm sure are ahead. It's my great pleasure at this point to welcome to the show Ivan Misner. Ivan, welcome.
John, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
You're coming to us from the States, and Ivan, you founded Bni in 1985. I'm sure that's very familiar to a lot of people around the world. Bni has now got a massive 10,000 plus chapters in 74 countries and 270,000 participants. What
283,000, but who's counting?
There you go. And you've only become 37 years becoming an overnight success.
That's right. That's absolutely correct.
So when you started off, Ivan, what was the why?
Well, the why for Bni was that I needed referrals for my consulting practice, and I was a management consultant. I needed I needed referrals for my business, and I hoped that I would be able to refer some of my friends. So I put together a group that we could start passing business to each other. What I didn't expect was that really everyone has this challenge. I mean, I was young. I was 28 years old. I thought most businesses had this figured out, and in fact, they didn't. My Brody moment, and Brody, if you remember the movie Jaws, Sheriff Brody, towards the end of the movie, saw the shark for the very first time, and he walked into the wheelhouse with the captain, and he said, "We're going to need a bigger boat." And my Brody moment really was at the end of 1985, after I opened up 20 chapters of Bni without a plan, without trying. And I realized that I had struck a chord in the business community, and that really Bni was an example of necessity being the mother of invention, and it helped a lot of businesses. And that's when I sat down and created the plan to scale Bni. And really my original goal was to try and get over 10,000 chapters, which we now have.
Wow, well done. And it's been certainly a great success story. So you started the business pre-internet, of course, pre-mobile phones, certainly for many parts of the world. What's changed over that time, essentially, and how do you deal with change?
Well, look, many things have changed, but some things haven't. People are still people, and people want to do business with other people. And the technology has definitely changed, but Bni has embraced technology. If you look at our growth in the first 11 years of Bni, from 1985 to 1996, the first 11 years, Bni opened about 500 groups. And by 96, the internet was starting to grow, and the media was saying to me, "Aren't you worried about the internet?" And I was like, "No, I think we can embrace the technology." Well, if you look at Bni from 1997 to 2008, we went from 500 groups to 5,000. So, did the internet affect Bni? Yes, it helped us grow. Yep. And we have always embraced technology. Look at our domain name, bni.com. You cannot get a 3-letter domain name unless you were an early adopter to technology. So we have always wanted to integrate the tools to network effectively into our program as much as possible. As a matter of fact, 3 years ago, I wrote an article that's still up on entrepreneur.com that said the future of face-to-face is online. I wrote that in 2018 because the technology was advancing at such a rate that I realized that we would either be disrupted as an organization or we could lead the disruption. And I wanted to lead the disruption. And I'm pleased to say that when COVID hit, we were reasonably well set to embrace the technology. And we've pivoted all 10,000 of our chapters from weekly in-person meetings to online meetings weekly. And it's really what I think allowed us to not only survive, but to thrive and grow. BNI has 37 years of consecutive growth. There are not many companies in the world that could say they have grown year over year for 37 years.
And mainly with organizations that involve a membership or a client base of some kind, you get a curve where you get here, but natural attrition takes over unless you really ramping up your sales. You end up plateauing or even declining.
Yes. Yeah.
So
well, look, COVID certainly affected our membership. It didn't grow at the rate that it had been growing, but we grew. And when most businesses were declining, we grew.
So because you're an early adopter of the internet and strategies, you're almost an accidental COVID combatant, because you're already structured there, ready to go when COVID hit at the end of at the beginning of 2020.
I wouldn't say we were ready. I would say we were mentally ready, not technologically ready. So we had to ramp up very quickly, but we were mentally ready because I had been talking about it since 2018. And, what's interesting is most of the directors for BNI were like, oh no, that you don't say that. That's not really, the old man's starting to lose it now. It was that kind of dialogue. And I was saying, no, it's inevitable. COVID was an accelerant to what would have been inevitable. And so we were definitely mentally ready. Technologically, we had to ramp things up a bit.
Yep. So Ivan, and I'm not comparing you to this in any shape or form, but LinkedIn started in 2002 and now has 800 million users, mostly free. How does BNI differ, and why has there been such a massive take up on LinkedIn, albeit probably nowhere near the engagement that BNI enjoys?
Well, look, engagement is critical. And that's what BNI is about, is that engagement, where I can reach out to a fellow BNI member and ask for a referral, ask for help, and get it. Facebook has kind of redefined what a friend is. Friends are really truly different than what you may see on social media. And what most of the contacts I get on social media, whether it be Facebook or LinkedIn, are basically cold calling on the internet. People are constantly trying to sell to me. It's completely different than what we do in BNI, where we're a referral organization. You build a relationship, and through that relationship, you generate referrals. Last year, our organization passed about, I think it was 14 million referrals. We generated $16 billion worth of business for our members through these referrals. Yep. And so, you're really building, you're going deep in building relationships. If your network is a mile wide and an inch deep, it's never going to be very powerful.
Yep.
Your network does need to be wide, and LinkedIn certainly does that, but it also needs to be deep, really deep in certain places. And BNI does that. We don't have millions of members. We have hundreds of thousands, but the relationships are deep.
Yeah. Ivan, it used to be called the 6 degrees of separation. Where do you think that number is right now in terms of connectivity around the world?
Well, let's talk about six degrees of separation, because it's actually a fallacy. Where it is now, I have some ideas, but it was never real. It was based on the small world studies by Stanley Milgram back in the 1960s, where he gave a packet of material to someone and said, now, of course, this is before Google, where you could just, look someone up.
Yep.
And send it to him. But he said, find someone who might know someone who might know someone who might know someone who might know this person. And so they found that the packet they were in, I think, Kansas or Nebraska, and they had to send this packet of material to somebody who was in Boston. And they found, Stanley Milgram in his Small World study, found that it took on average 6 steps for people to get that packet of material to the person in Boston. But here's where the fallacy lies. Not everyone got it there. Only 29% of the participants found the person that it was supposed to go to. 71% couldn't find their car keys. I mean, they couldn't find the person. So the media picked up on that 6 steps and started calling it the 6 degrees of separation, when in fact, only 29% were separated by 6 degrees. The other, 2/3 were not. And so the question now is, are we separated by less than 6 degrees? Because we weren't when that concept came up. I would say probably not. Possibly, but probably not. And here's why. It's not just the connection. It's not just the contact, it's the connection. So if you wanted to get to, I just spent time on Necker Island, just literally got back yesterday from Necker Island with Richard Branson. If you wanted to be introduced to Richard Branson, and you reached out, and one of your listeners reached out to me because there's contact information on this podcast, I wouldn't make the connection. So I may be a contact, but am I a legitimate connection? Could someone ask me for a favor? And that's the difference between a contact and a connection. Can you pick up the phone? Can you call that person? Would they take your call? And if they do, if you ask them for a favor, would they do the favor for you? That's a real connection. And so I'm not sure that the 6 degrees has substantively reduced. Okay. Because it's all about the number of people you can really have a deep relationship or a deep connection with. And that's the key, I think, to networking. Yep.
Brilliant. So Necker Island, I'm familiar with that. I had 50 of my connections go down there in 2019 and spend a week or so down there. What was the outcome of Necker? What did you enjoy and what did you learn from that experience?
Well, Branson, I think one of the things that I love most about spending time with Richard Branson is his humility. He's a very humble person, which often surprises people. But I have said for many years that humble people don't think less of themselves, they just think of themselves less. And he's very much like that. I have seen him talk to billionaires and day laborers. And he talks to them in the same manner. He may talk about different subjects, but he treats the day laborer just as well as the billionaire in terms of conversation and respect. And I've always been extremely impressed, and I have seen it firsthand 2 or 3 occasions where he talked to people who were working on the island or on his new island, and just treating them with incredible respect. And I just love seeing that in someone as successful as him. I've seen people who are far, far less successful treat people horribly, but I've never seen that with him. And so that's one of the things that I learned a long time ago and continue to see every time I go there.
Okay. You've rubbed shoulders with a credible number of interesting and famous people. Aside from Richard, who's impacted you the most? Why did you like that person, or what did you take away from one of those meetings, if you could share that?
Well, I think 2 people that have really influenced me a great deal are Michael Gerber, who wrote the book, The E-Myth, The Entrepreneurial Myth. And when I started BNI, I picked up his book, the first edition of The E-Myth. And there was just so many great concepts in there about learning how to work on the business, not in the business. And one of the things he says in there, I'll paraphrase it, is write everything down as though you're going to franchise your business, even if you have no intention of ever franchising your business. I thought that was a really good advice. And so I started writing everything down as though I was going to franchise my business, and I had no intention of franchising BNI. But then, you know, a few years into BNI, I'm like, well, wait a minute, why shouldn't I franchise BNI? And I ended up franchising BNI because I did all of the things that he said to do as though you're going to franchise, even if you don't plan on it. And so that helped BNI grow even quicker. And so the great thing with Michael is somebody asked me this question maybe 15 years ago or more. And it was on a radio show in San Diego. And I basically gave the same story I just gave you. And guess who called me the next day? Michael Gerber. And Michael said, hey, I was driving my car here in San Diego and I hear you on the radio. And I just wanted to call you and thank you for mentioning my book, because the book had been now, you know, it was not 20 years at that point. And he said, I just want to thank you for mentioning my book. I really appreciate it. And I mean, I was just, he is an icon in business. And he said, hey, I'd like to get together. What are you doing this week? I said, well, I'm at my lake house in Big Bear. I'm headed up there right now. You're welcome to join me. So he and his wife, Luz Delia, joined my family and a couple of other business associates up at my lake house. And I really got to know Michael very well. And he and I are now good friends. And if you go to ivanmisner.com, my blog, you'll see, and you type in Michael Gerber, you'll see a couple of videos that I've done with Michael. One of them right here in my office in Austin, Texas. And so, yeah, Michael really taught me a lot about scaling a business. And the second would be Jack Canfield. And Jack is an amazing person. Jack wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul. He was co-author of the series, and he wrote the Success Principles book. Second edition, if you have a copy of the second edition, I contributed to that book, story about networking. What I love about Jack is that his ego does not enter the room before he does. In many ways, he's like Branson. I mean, Jack has sold 750 million books. Billion, 750 million books. And he's, you know, he's always the first guy up in the front row, taking notes, absorbing information. I've learned a lot from Jack as well. And Jack has become a really good friend. I met him probably 17 years ago. And he invited me to join an organization called the Transformational Leadership Council, which I'm now a member of.
Wow. It was interesting. On my 2 quantum shows ago, I had Alan Peace, Alan, his wife, Barbara, who wrote the series on body language, and they had the opportunity and turned it down to co-author the book with Jack back in the day. So Alan's gone on to sell 30 million books, but not 750 million. So interesting. Ivan, the little birdies told me that you might be off on some sort of extraterrestrial journey, taking networking beyond the planet. What's all that about?
I am. I was on Necker Island 14 years ago. And on the last day, it was 2007, and I had the chance to go there 4 times now. I literally just got back yesterday, as I said, and I was there first in 2007. And on the last day, Richard said to everybody, hey, I'm doing something kind of new and interesting. Would you guys like to see a video on it? And we're like, yeah, sure. So we're in the great room, great house. And he pops in this DVD. And it's this crazy idea of taking a mothership with a spaceship and going up, I don't know, 50, 60,000 feet, dropping a spaceship. The concept that won the X Prize. And the spaceship then going 50 miles or more into space. So you're in outer space. And he said, we're gonna do a commercial spaceship where people can fly, become astronauts. And you know, we've started it. And he popped the DVD out and he looked at me. For some reason, he looked at me and he said, you should do this. And I said, yes, I'm in. And he handed me the DVD, which last time I saw him, I had him sign it because I still have it. And so, yeah, I just announced it. I'm a future astronaut on Virgin Galactic, and really excited. That's the reason I was there last week, was future astronauts were invited back to Necker to see Richard and talk about the trip.
And so we're going to have the first referral passed in out of the atmosphere on.
Yeah, well, I'm going to try. We'll see if we can do a quick networking meeting in outer space.
I wrote a thing called 50% of people in business survive despite their best efforts not to, and the other half fail. And less than 1% of businesses that started in 1985 are still around today. Why is that? Other than, it's a long time ago.
I'm sorry?
Other than it's a long time ago.
Yeah, well, yeah, but you'd think more businesses would survive than do. When I was a management consultant, it used to surprise me when I first started. It surprised me that 50% of all businesses failed after a few years. After being in business for a long time now, it now surprises me that 50% make it after a few years, because they're just winging it. Most businesses are just winging it. They don't have a plan to scale. I think the one thing that I tell businesses, if you really, really want to be successful, and I could only give you one suggestion, it would be do 6 things 1,000 times, not 1,000 things 6 times. Do 6 things 1,000 times, not 1,000 things 6 times. What I see people doing is constantly chasing bright, shiny objects. They're constantly looking for some new idea. There's got to be something, some easier way to do this. And they're always looking for something new. Instead of landing on the KPIs of your business, the key performance indicators, and then talking to mentors, listening to shows like this, finding people who really understand business, and then taking those ideas and doing them 1,000 times. It's about doing 6 things 1,000 times. Now, it doesn't have to be 6. It can be 5. It can be 7. But it's about doing a handful of things over and over and over again. If I have any superpower as a business person, it is that I am a dog with a bone. I will work it and work it and work it and work it until I get it to be working the way I want it to work. And I think that that's probably the biggest mistake. And that's why businesses fail, is that they're constantly chasing something new. I've even had it in my own company. I had a top performing franchise in the United States, one of the top 10 in the world in the US. And this guy comes to me and he says, I got a great idea. Like, what is it? He said, we're going to do monthly mixers. And we're going to invite everybody. And when they come to these mixers, then we're going to then invite them to a local chapter meeting. And I said, don't do that. He said, no, it's going to be great. He said and it's true. He lived in a city that is known for parties.
Yep.
And he said, no, this is going to be fantastic. I said, it's not going to be fantastic because I did it. It failed. I don't recommend it. And the reason is you're getting people to come to an evening event. We don't do very many, if any. We do some evening meetings, but very few. So it's completely different in terms of the time. And then the meeting itself will be totally different. And then you're going to basically have to convince them twice, first to come to this evening thing, then come to an actual meeting. It's going to actually distract you. He said, no, it's going to be fantastic. John, within a year and a half, he had dropped from top 10 to bottom 30. Completely lost his focus.
Yep.
Totally chasing a bright, shiny object. I usually keep a bright, shiny object right here. I don't see it, but I usually keep a little crystal ball right here to talk about, where that's what happens. People chase these bright, shiny objects and they get off track. It's about doing 6 things 1,000 times, not 1,000 things 6 times.
Great advice. It's a little bit like McDonald's when they tried to get into salads, and you think, hang on, the profile of the person that goes to McDonald's is not someone that's health conscious. It's not on the front of their mind. So,
no.
Ivan, what's you're the master of networking, and we do have a number. You'll be happy to know we do have a number of networks, and certainly just about everybody on this call will be part of one of them. May not be BNI, but some of the variety that we have around the world nowadays. What are the couple of do's and don'ts for if someone was going to go to networking for the first time? What would the master say?
Well, don't use networking as a face-to-face cold calling opportunity. That's one of the biggest mistakes that people make is they, go around and introduce themselves and they go right into sales mode. Networking is more about farming than it is about hunting. It's about cultivating relationships with other business professionals. It's not a get-rich-quick scheme. And so people say, well, if you're not going to networking meetings to make sales, why go to networking meetings? You go to networking meetings to work your way through what I call the VCP process. Visibility, credibility, profitability. VCP. First, you have to be visible. People have to know who you are and what you do. And then once you've created visibility, then you can move to credibility, where people know who you are, they know what you do, they know you're good at it. And then once you get through credibility, you can get to profitability, where people know who you are, they know what you do, they know you're good at it, and they're willing to pass you referrals on an ongoing reciprocal basis. And so it's going to networking meetings is all about working through the VCP process. You meet someone new, you're at pre-visibility. And what I see happen is people try to jump over visibility, jump over credibility, and try to get right to profitability. In one of my books, we call that premature solicitation, which you don't want to say fast 3 times, it'll get you in trouble. And it's just a bad idea. It's about building relationships with people. So when you meet someone new, you get to visibility. When you meet someone who you work your way through the credibility. When you meet somebody that you're passing referrals to, it's a whole different discussion than it is with somebody you meet for the first time. And so it's about really categorizing the people that you have relationships with and where they sit in the VCP process. These are 2 or 3 of the things that you really want to do if you want to do it right.
Yep. And the old principle of giver's gain, I guess, give 1, get back 2.
Yeah, giver's gain is one of the principal core values of BNI, and I think it's an important concept and one that we use in BNI a great deal. To me, giver's gain is more than a phrase. It's a way of living one's life. It's a perspective to view and interact with the world. It's an attitude, not an expectation. And when it's applied properly, it'll change your life. And when it changes enough lives, it'll change the world.
Brilliant, brilliant. So Ivan, if you had the chance to start BNI again, what would you increase, decrease, or change?
If I were to start BNI again, it would be impossible to bootstrap it. I bootstrapped BNI. My investment to start BNI was, in the hundreds of dollars. Now it would be it'd probably have to be in the millions of dollars, because we have added so many layers to what BNI is, starting with a system called Bni Connect, which is an online platform, sort of like LinkedIn, but it's a walled garden. So in order to play on Bni Connect, you got to be a member. And so we have an online platform for training, which costs a fortune to put together, but it enables us to teach people globally how to run an effective meeting. So I think it would be almost impossible to bootstrap it today. It would require a lot of investors to get to the point that we have brought BNI to, because we have poured a lot of money into the infrastructure of our system, especially after COVID, where we transitioned our chapters to online. Now, we're not all online anymore. Our goal now is to work with chapters in making one of 3 choices: to either go back to meeting in person when it is safe in the areas, and it varies in different countries around the world and different areas in the country. So when it's safe, go back to our normal platform, or go strictly online. Now, BNI opened 700 chapters during COVID. 700. We have 700 chapters that have never met in person.
Yep.
They're probably likely to stay online. So on one end of the spectrum, we have chapters who are going to go back to the way things were, which is fine. On the other end, we have chapters who are going to be totally online, which is fine. And what's really intriguing to me is that we have many groups that are going to become a hybrid, which I love. They're going to do something like meet online 3 times a month and meet in person once a month. Because there's nothing better than, meeting in person, shaking someone's hands when you can do that now, or at least a fist bump, looking them into the 3-dimensional eyes and having a conversation with people in person versus online, which is clearly it works, but there's something powerful about the in-person. So I love the hybrid concept. And I think companies that are trying to start today as a network are at a huge disadvantage because we have invested so heavily into the infrastructure of this to help people generate billions of dollars in business.
Yep. Ivan, well, some really wise words and some interesting concepts there. So if you could wave a magic wand over your life, what if anything, would you change?
Nothing.
Oh, okay.
And I'll tell you why. Your failures are your tuition for success. Now, if you asked me, have you made a lot of failures? My answer would have been, oh yeah, boatload. Lots of mistakes. I think people regret the things that have happened when they don't live their values. When they say, I probably shouldn't do this, but I'm going to do this because maybe there's money in it, or, I don't want to do business with this person, but I'm gonna because I need the money. And when you do something like that, then you're not quite living your values and you have regrets. I've made a lot of mistakes, but I have virtually no regrets because I really tried to live my life by my values. And so the mistakes that I made were my tuition for success. And I think if you look at mistakes as, okay, I'm not going to do that again. What would I do differently? And then you move forward, those mistakes really literally become your tuition. So for that reason, I would say I wouldn't do anything different because I'm living my dream life. I'm a 20-year overnight success, but I'm living my dream life. And a lot of people don't know this, but I actually have another business that's older than Bni. It's an real estate investment company. It's that business that has allowed me to do crazy things like Virgin Galactic.
Yep. Ivan, and there's a theme for reoccurring revenue and repeatable revenue, but that's another story.
Yeah, definitely.
Ivan, mental health is a pretty hot topic around the world for business owners as well as staff. Have you run across any good strategies on, well, what do you do yourself to deal with your own self?
Yes, absolutely. And I wrote about it in a book called Who's in Your Room, which is about the people you surround yourself with. And in there, I talk about the secret to balance in life. So John, would you like to know my secret to balance?
100%.
All right, everyone who's watching this or listening to this, here it is. Ready? Forget about balance. You'll never have it. It's not possible, especially entrepreneurs. And we think about balance like scales. And our personal life has to be in balance with our professional life, which has to be in balance with our spiritual life, which has to be in balance with our health. And the truth is, life is more of a juggling act than it is a balancing act. So that's the bad news. Here's the good news. You may not be able to live a life of balance, which I believe is impossible for an entrepreneur especially, but you can live a life in harmony. And this is more than semantics. Even the graphic for harmony, the yin and the yang, are out of balance when you separate them. But together they create a life of harmony. And so while I don't think balance is possible, I do believe harmony is possible. And in the book, Who's in Your Room, I talk about how do you create a life of harmony? Because I've lived a life that's way out of balance. I have 2.3 million miles on just one airline.
Yep.
So, I mean, I've been on the road a lot, but I also believe in family. And, when I wasn't traveling, I was home for dinner every night with the family. And so, that's one of the ways you create harmony is how you manage your time. But here's probably one of the most important is just a handful of words: be here now. 3 words: be here now. Don't be at work beating yourself up for not spending time with the family last night. Don't be at home thinking about that project that's got to be done at the office. Wherever you are, be fully, completely present to that. Nobody's perfect at this, by the way, but the better you are, the more you can create a life of harmony. Have margins in your life. Create margins like the margins on a page in a book, where it's space for you, for your family. For me, I've always, unless I was traveling or at a convention or something, I would always take a mental health day. Still do. One day, I don't do anything. I go in the pool, I'll maybe barbecue, I'll go out on my boat, I'll watch movies. Yes, I love watching Netflix. And so that's my mental health day. That's my margin.
Yep.
And so there are many different things that you can do, and I talk about a lot of them in that book. But that, to me, is the way you can have a life of harmony. And although my life was out of balance, I really feel like I lived a life of harmony.
Brilliant, brilliant. Ivan, you wouldn't have got to where you are now, and so many groups everywhere and whatnot, if you weren't a great leader. What would be the #1 tip on leadership that you could give someone, that particularly those that want to sort of build a team and scale a business?
Yeah, I'll give it to you in one sentence. Leadership is not about managing and complying. It's about mobilizing and inspiring. Management is about managing and complying, but leadership is about mobilizing and inspiring. That's what leadership is about. It's about getting the team together and, moving in one direction. You're not a leader until you have people following you. And in order to get people to follow you, you have to mobilize them. You have to inspire them. And to me, that I think is incredibly important. I think it's incredibly important. We all have people who are in our life, in our story. John, if I asked you, who made a difference in your life, I'm sure you'd come up with names. You asked who made a difference in my business life, and I talked about Michael Gerber and Jack Canfield. But we all have people in our personal life that really changed our trajectory in life. We could all talk about those stories. But to me, the real question is not who's in my story. The real question is, whose story am I in?
Important distinction.
So it's not who's in your story, it's whose story are you in? Whose life have you changed? Who have you helped? Who have you supported? Who have you inspired? Who have you mobilized? Whose life have you made a difference in? And to me, that's an important aspect of leadership, is making a difference in other people.
Yep. Ivan, you're a long-term investor in property, and property is a very sound thing to be in. I've seen some recent stuff on NFTs, non-fungible tokens, and tokenization and cryptocurrency. What's your brief overview of that, if you have any thoughts?
Yeah, so of all your questions, that's the one I feel least qualified to respond to. I have been investing in real estate. I mean, I purchased my first piece of property when I was about 25. It was a condo, which I, over the years, have flipped that condo to be half of a $1.5 million commercial building. So I have invested in real estate for many, many, many years, but I'm not an expert on cryptocurrency. I have invested in cryptocurrency and I have made money in cryptocurrency, but not a killing. And I didn't invest in I waited a long time. I literally just invested in it like a year ago because I thought it was a little potentially sketchy, but clearly it is here to stay. And so I did invest in it, but I'm not an expert on cryptocurrency. So that's about the most I could say.
We'll have to have another conversation about NFTs and property at some point in the future.
Yeah.
Happy to do that. Ivan, what's next on the horizon other than to be a jet setter in space?
Well, next, personally, I'm headed to Antarctica in a couple of weeks. You'll see on my blog, I'll have a big Bni flag that I'll hold up in Antarctica. So that's going to be fun. But from a Bni perspective, I think that Bni will continue to grow as a platform company. What does that mean? I don't know. I'm not quite sure, but I have ideas. And I think that we will in fact be some form of a platform, which we are now, because we are meeting a lot online. We have our training online. We have our networking online as well as in person. And so I think the organization is going to continue to lean towards opportunities that are platform based. You know, it's not about having the answers. It's about asking the questions. And it's about constantly looking over the horizon to what's ahead. I mean, that's why I wrote that article in 2018, that the future of face-to-face is online. And I think the future of networking will absolutely include a platform process in the in-face and online communities. So more to come as we figure it out. We will continue to share it. And I certainly share my ideas on my blog, ivanmisner.com.
Ivan, it's been my absolute pleasure, and I'm sure everybody watching this will have to go and replay it 2-3 times to get all the sound bites out of there. So some great insights and some inspirations and ideas. I think you got all three on the hit the nail on the head. So thank you very, very much for giving up your time today. I know you're a busy guy, and again, on behalf of everybody watching, thank you very much.
Thanks, John. And when, a lot of people say you're really busy. I like to say I have a full life. That's so, nobody's goal is to be busy, but our goal should be to have a full life. And I like to view it as I have a very, very full life.
Thank you very much, Ivan Misner.
Thank you, John.